Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. It's 2:15 Eastern Standard Time start today. A little different than usual, but I appreciate everybody's patience hanging out because I know so many of you are used to us starting at 2 o'clock. But we got a good show for you today. It was not a late start because I had to do my hair, Marcus, but I appreciate the thought there. No. We just had some other things going on. Hey, I haven't seen Shane in a long time, but it's nice to see Shane in the chat. I'm actually going to be making a trip up to Ohio sometime this summer, so maybe we should try to get together. But hey, we're here to talk with artist Tim Seeley, so let me bring Tim into the show here and get this thing started. Hey, Tim, how you doing, man?
Hey, you can tell everybody I was going to be late because I thought I had a Muay Thai class, but I was actually late because I was searching for Easter eggs with my 4-year-old. So that's the real truth of what happened and why I stumbled in 15 minutes late. So my fault. I appreciate you taking the heat for the hair.
Yeah, well, everybody, they're fixated on it. I don't know why, but yeah, I thought that was cool. You had a martial arts class scheduled from from 1 to 2 my time, and then it got canceled. But that's what happens when you have kids. You end up missing out on some of the things that you hold dear to make sure the kids get a good experience.
Yeah, I mean, also always looking for excuse to get out of getting kicked in the head. So, when I can, yeah.
How long you been getting kicked in the head?
Only for a few months. After we had the kid and all this stuff, my goal eventually was to get back to going to a gym or something. But right across the street from my house is a Muay Thai place, and I was like, well, I can minimize the amount of work to do to get there and maximize the amount of getting kicked in the head. So I took that option, and so I've been doing it for a couple months. I like the nice thing about Muay Thai is all the other martial arts are sort of more this is really about you and your spiritual, and it's not really about fighting. And Muay Thai is just nope, it's about hurting people. That's it. That's the whole thing. No bullshit. It's here. You're supposed to kick people hard. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I've never done any martial arts really. My wife was big into jujitsu when I met her. She's like a brown belt or something.
Yeah,
so I got to watch her fight a few times, and it was always interesting to meet the woman of your dreams, and she could kick the crap out of you.
That's the goal. If your woman can kick the shit out of you, then you're doing something wrong. That's the goal.
Exactly, man. So, but that's interesting that it's right across the street, though. It's very convenient.
I'm also incredibly lazy, so if it had been just about anything that was close, I would have done it. It could have been Brazilian dance fighting or whatever. I would have done it if it's across the street. I'll do it. I don't, I'm easy.
Good thing it wasn't line dancing or clogging or something like that, but you would have done it.
I would have done it. I don't care. Burn some calories and let me have a couple beers after work. I'm good with it.
Very, very cool. That's funny. You mentioned that. I was reading through some interviews with you. It was the one that was in the loop, and you mentioned the need for getting up from your desk and having some kind of exercise so that you don't become a slug or a pear-shaped whatever. I don't remember your exact quote, but you're sticking to that though.
Oh man, and also I just don't want very early on when I was started doing comics full time. I got on this thing, which I think everybody naturally does, which is, you start waking up later and then you start working later and, start working at 2 o'clock, work till 10, start working at 10 o'clock, work till, 6 or something in the morning. And so I did that for a while and just was at 23 or 24, I was my arms were all messed up from, we call it carpal tunnel and all this shit. I'm 24. So I anticipated if I keep doing this, I'll be a wreck by, 40. So I changed all that stuff up and I only work, I have a schedule. I check out after 10 hours of work and I check out. I do not touch it. I never work overnight. I never do any of that shit. And I try to exercise. I'm 47 and I'm still alive and nothing is broken. My hands still work. And, I got a beer gut, but I'm not a complete loaf yet. So, I'm just trying to maximize this so I can keep making shit as long as possible. That's my goal.
Well, that's very wise. Good approach. So, full-time in comics, when did that start?
Let's say I graduated college when I was 23 in 2000. And then I was right off the bat, I started doing some stuff for Avatar Press. I was doing like I was drawing like their sexy books. My full-time job was at a kids book company, so I would draw kids book stuff during the day, and then I would go home and draw titties all night. And then that's lasted for about 2 years, and then I started working at Devil's Due Publishing. I moved down to Chicago here and started full time there when I was 25, and I have never had another job that wasn't comics since I was 25, so 22 years. And it sort of evolved. I worked at Devil's Due for about 5 years, and then I went freelance. I've been freelancer for 18 years, which is a thing I never wanted to do, but at this point, that's how comics work. So, but yeah, so I do either I kind of become more of a writer at this point, which is weird, but that allows me to still do covers and occasional interiors. I set up basically doing the book Local Man so I could keep drawing.
Mhm.
So I draw the flip books in those in that book too. So so mostly I write. I also teach art at a college here in Chicago, Columbia College, and then I get to draw every once in a while.
Well, that's not too bad. I mean, did you when you started out your well, what drew you to comics in the first place? And don't tell me it was the TNA, and that's what it was.
I mean, sure,
But maybe you can if that's the truth.
it's probably a little bit. No, but I was a kid grew up in central Wisconsin, like small town, very country, and there wasn't a shitload to do. But my dad was a big. He was just like he was a welder, like tough guy, but he was also a big nerd, and so he would get Spider-Man and stuff when he was a kid, and then we would go camping or something, and my parents would buy me a bunch of comics, and my dad had good choice, give me Avengers and Spider-Man, Hulk and stuff, and I just fell in love with them, and it was something to do while being a kid in the country, and so it was just like I became obsessed with it, but it was also for me it was like I loved the comics, but I also loved the idea of how to make them. So as soon as I had read a comic, I was like, I'm gonna draw one, and so they always kind of came together for me. And I think that's kind of why I love superheroes and everything like that that come with that stuff. But that's not my first thing about comics. I'm sort of more into comics just as a whole. So it's never been just Marvel or DC or something for me. I was always into the process and like the history and all kinds of different genres. So that's kind of what always kept me interested. And I think it was just like you could just make something up and be one person in a small town in Wisconsin. Like that just seemed like an amazing thing to me that you could just make up an entire world from your uh, like my beat up desk that I had in my parents at my parents' house. I could just make up an entire universe, and that was like so appealing, I guess.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. But did you? So clearly you're doing some writing there. But did you see yourself as a writer? I mean, at that point in time, because that's the one thing when I look at your the 22-year career of yours, you've done a lot, maybe a little bit more writing than drawing. I mean, at least for interiors or complete books, right?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I just didn't know that's what it was. Like I didn't, it's there was no internet when I was a kid. I'm that old. There was no internet till I was in my late teens, so I didn't really know how comics were made. I just had the sense that, like the idea that things were separated, writer, artist, inker, colorist, like to me that I just knew someone made this thing. And so, I would just make comics whole cloth, write them, draw them, do everything. Not well, but, that's what I was doing for fun. And then by the time, I started doing stuff more professionally, I felt like kind of afraid to write my own stuff. I kind of felt like, well, those people are real screenwriters. Those are real writers. Uh,
Hmm.
it seemed kind of like an impossible task. And so, when I first started doing stuff, I was happy to have other people write stuff for me. And then the problem I would start having in general when I was, doing my comics like self-publishing is I would work with someone and I would just tell them so much stuff and they just go, just write it yourself. And then I go, oh, I guess I am kind of doing this. So really, it was a typing thing. It was like I just didn't want to type, is what it came down to. But yeah. So then I guess if there's a term for it, I guess I consider myself a cartoonist, which a cartoonist in that I want to do everything, and if I could, I would write and draw and ink and letter and color book, all myself. In monthly comics, that's pretty hard to do, if not impossible. Uh,
Hmm.
but I think I'm still like a cartoonist at heart more than I am a just a writer or just a color, just a penciler. Like I think for me, it's just like to make everything. Um, but it's really nice and efficient to be a writer because I can write like 4 scripts a month and then get paid pretty well, get decent royalties and stuff. So, and I can make more shit up, which is I think you know that's probably my biggest superpower is I can just make shit up, and that's the thing you can do. Like I can have multiple image books going, and I can do some stuff, do some corporate stuff, do some stuff for like TV or film or whatever, and then
Hmm.
come back and make my comics. So it's good for my schedule, I guess, to be a guy who writes most of the time.
I mean, when you're writing, are you giving the artists that you work with the thumbnails, concepts, anything like that, or do you let them do their thing because that's you want to be more little hands off? What's that process like?
Well, mostly I find artists hate when you give them too much shit. So, but I also have the problem that I can't really write a character until I've drawn them, until I know what they look like at least. So I do a lot of like, here's a sketch for how this character looks, and you can do your version of it, but like I can't really like understand what I'm writing, and because I guess I'm visually oriented, so a lot of my scripts come with like, here's a crappy ass drawing I did quick of how this character looks. And so like when I was working on Nightwing, like I had to design Raptor, even though I gave it to Javier and said, "You fix it," but just so you know, this is what I'm thinking. Or when I was doing Shadow Stars, like I was designing, the other characters or most of the hack slash characters, the villains and stuff, I designed, or at least a first draft. And then but I'm very cool with someone doing their version. But yeah, just have like if when I'm writing someone and if I don't know what they look like, I don't know how they talk. So it's like there's like a blank spot in my head, which is like some of the nice thing about working on like established characters because they have designs. But yeah, I just can't do it. Like the entire local man stuff. Like Tony and I designed all that stuff before we started, and I a lot of those characters that I put in there were just I just had a cool design. I didn't know what it was. I just like I don't know. I did this, and I had to figure out what it is. But I think visually first. So I tend to write full scripts because I think the artists like it that way. But I'm also pretty open. It's like here's what I need, but you can do whatever you want. But then there is often like here's a bunch of reference or here's a sketch I did just to kind of ease my own obsessive detail oriented
Hmm.
vision.
Well, that's cool. That's I was that was going to be one of my questions: full script or plot?
Yeah.
Turning it over to the artist, but so you're more of a full script guy. That's
Yeah, which is weird. I don't know. I know most of the artists I work with and the kids I teach at college, they tend to think of things visually, of course. So they do like thumbnails as scripts. I think for me, it's partially just sort of I'm a little control freaky in a way, and so if I do a full script, I'm at least getting out everything. Like I need to know what people say. Like I can't do. I have friends who've done the thing where they write out a script, or you do it like Stan Lee would do it or something. Here, draw this, and then I'll write dialogue over the top of it later. No fucking way. Like I will, I will lose sleep if I don't know what they're saying. I just can't. I can't do it. I have to know who these people are and stuff. So full script lets me do that, and I think I sort of lead stories by dialogue to some degree. And sometimes when I kind of get stuck, I'll just write the conversation out and then figure out what goes around that conversation.
sure.
You know,
So tell me a bit about Hack Slash and how that all came about.
yeah, So I was working at Devil's Due. I was actually a staff guy at Devil's Due at the time. So Devil's Due kind of started because Josh Blaylock got the rights to GI Joe and was like, "Oh my god, I have the rights to GI Joe," and then just went right at it and started a publishing company and was doing all this stuff by himself, and then realized, by God, this is too much work. So I had interned at Marvel Comics in 1999 in college, and so Josh hired me to sort of like help traffic stuff and do art direction. So I moved here to Chicago, and then while working on GI Joe, it became just like easier for me just to draw it because I was talking to Hasbro like every day, and
Hmm.
they knew I knew what they wanted. So I was just like, you know what, I'll just draw the damn thing, and it was great. Um, but it was kind of like going against what I said I was going to do, which was, make up my own stuff. And Hasbro had like a list as we went on, like, hey, you can't do this, you can't show underwear, or you know, you can't cut anybody's head off, or you can't say these words. And so, kind of as a spoof, but also kind of as a therapeutic thing, I started putting together like a comic that would include all the things I couldn't do in GI Joe. So it was like, underwear and butt shots and people getting shot in the head and whatever. And as I was sort of kicking that stuff around, uh, I was trying to think of something I could do that I didn't have to do research on, because I didn't have a lot of time. Because drawing GI Joe and working at Devil's Due was like, more than a full time job. Also, I was like 25, so I also wanted to have time to like go drink and chase ladies and stuff. Um, but so the only thing I was like, I do not need to do research is B movies, because I grew up watching every slasher movie and every crappy science fiction movie and every vampire movie, because my dad was a huge fan of that stuff. So reasoned that I was going to take that list and set a story in a world of B movie tropes, essentially. And so Hack Slash was kind of, one night I was right around Halloween. AMC used to run marathons of all the slasher movies, so I'm kicking all this stuff around my head, and then I got a really bad flu, and so I was just like sick and looped up on medicine, and I watched all of the Michael Myers movies, all the Jason movies, all the Freddy movies, with ad breaks while chugging, Dimetap or whatever the fuck, and then all of it kind of came together. And then the next day, I go back to work a couple days later, and I was talking to this dude, Marshall Dillon, who I used to work with, and I said, I have this idea. It's gonna be sort of like this girl who she's the last girl of a slasher story, but she wins, and then she takes it on the road and she hunts down the other characters. I'm gonna call it Hack Slash, and the main character is named Cassie. And then Marshall was like, "Is her last name Hack?" And I was like, "Yes, her last name is Hack." And then it like all kind of came together that way. And so I drew up some designs and stuff and started plotting stuff out. And I had worked with this dude, Stefano Caselli, as an editor at Devil's Due. He was the artist on Micronauts at the time. And he and I got along really well. We would just talk in email or over the phone, and we'd never really met. But I sent him an email that says, "You're Italian. I assume you like horror." And he was like, "That's true." And so I pitched him Hack Slash, and he turned around and sent me the sketch. I was like, "That's it. That's better than my design." And so we teamed up on it. And the first book, was sort of like a shocking runaway hit, I guess, for us. We were a small company. We had GI Joe and stuff. Those were selling a certain number, but our creator-owned stuff wasn't hitting as hard. And Hack Slash kind of took off, and I loved it so much I could just keep doing it, even though like for the first year and a half, I don't think I made any money on it. I would just give it all to the artist, but it just sort of I kept coming up with dumbass ideas, and I kept coming up with big stories, and it was like it built as a book for that readers were into. So now I'm stuck with it. Now it's been 20 years and I'm still doing it. So it all works out.
Well, I mean, I'm a fan of the B movie genres as well. So, I grew up on that same thing. My father was a welder as well.
Really?
So we have that in common, but I didn't grow up in Wisconsin. But now the beer belly makes a lot more sense, though, because.
Right, exactly.
But no, yeah. I mean, Reanimator, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I love bad flicks. I mean, my son's name is Ash after Evil Dead films. I mean, that's my true love. And then bad, then good. Well, I wouldn't say bad. Good Chinese, action movies, I guess.
Oh, I love like the John Woo stuff is some of my favorite shit.
Mm-hmm. Oh
but
yeah.
Like the first issue of Hack Slash, actually, speaking of Ash, when I started working at Devil's Due full time, we had GI Joe, and so then we were trying to get licenses for other stuff because we had this influx of cash, and we were young and crazy. We just try anything. So one of my jobs was to find other stuff that we could pursue licenses for. So we did Micronauts, and we got Voltron, and we got a couple other things. And Josh told me to pick a couple, so I picked Master of the Universe and then Evil Dead. So I put together this whole pitch for Evil Dead, and my pitch was basically, Ash ends up in a veterinarian place, and all these animals become deadites, and and then Ash has to take that, and we didn't get the rights to it. Actually, Dynamite beat us to it, though we ended up publishing it, whatever strange way. But that story that I wrote for Ash became Cassie's first story. So the first story has, instead of Deadites, they're slasher or zombie animals, and so yeah. So and then we eventually did a hack slash versus Ash, uh, hack slash Ash underlined, and and I got to use like a lot of the stuff that I had been kind of percolating for Army of Darkness and stuff in there. So also my favorite crossover we did was the Army of Darkness one, the Ash one.
Sweet. I did not read that one, but I'm gonna have to go see if I can find it online or pick up a copy.
It's a good one. God damn it, I'll defend it to death. It's good.
So that's interesting though. So you had to go out and scout for some of the IPs to do there as well. So they really gave you a lot of like high level work there. I mean, if that's the case.
I mean, Josh would do the numbers and stuff, and we had, as we grew, we had people who could handle accounting and shit. But that was the cool thing with Devil's Doom. We started it was literally just like, Josh, his girlfriend Susan, Mike Norton, myself, Crank, and we were just like, we were doing all the stuff that would go to an actual licensing person or an actual like, we were emailing or calling Mattel and being like, hey, we want to do Mass Universe, and we were taking meetings with going to St. Louis to take a meeting with the people who own Voltron and stuff. It was crazy. Like, now that I think about it, like, that was kind of ballsy,
Yeah.
But also, there's a cool thing when you're like 25 is you just don't have any, you don't know what you don't know, so like you have no fear, So I also think of like, just even with Hack Slash, like how I can't believe I was like, you know what, I'll just make a slasher comic. That's fine. I'll just do that, and it'll be this, and it'll look kind of like a Zenescope book, but it'll be written much differently. It'll be written like a heart-filled sort of emotional thing, but it'll look like a titty book. And I was like, it'll work. It's fine. I'm good, and it worked. But I think I would be terrified to try something like that now that I'm 47. Like, the things that you learn as you go around sort of inhibit maybe some of the risk taking you totally get away with when you're younger.
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly getting started with G.I. Joe gave you that corporate experience of having to deal with some pretty sticky situations with regards to what you can and can't do. It's not quite LucasArts level.
No.
I'm sure control, but but I totally get that. I mean, the way they've kind of moved that franchise into film and everything after that point in time, I can see that being pretty heavy-handed.
They were loose at first, but yeah, when Spielberg started sniffing around Transformers, all of a sudden we would get much tighter notes, and I was like, oh, I see. And fair enough, they were like protecting their IP before they knew they were going to get a film to follow up Transformers. So, and obviously that didn't shake out hugely great because G.I. Joe was neither of them were massively successful compared to Transformers anyway. But yeah, so I kind of saw that stuff from the inside, and and we were also like, it's not like we were pretty respectful, and if we got rights to something, we weren't going to be like, pull a Batman dick pic on it or something, like we were respectful, and we knew what these things were, and we mostly, it was stuff that we loved, so we would take care of it as best we could as 25-year-old idiots.
So when did you guys start that 4 Star Studios? Was that in that time period, or was it after Devil's Due?
It was after. So I worked at Devil's Due for 5 years on staff, and then we lost the G.I. Joe license, in part because all of a sudden it was worth a lot more money, and other people started throwing money at it, including IDW, who ended up getting the rights away from us. And then, no harm, no foul, shit happens. But we became harder to maintain Devil's Due for Josh, so it kind of got smaller and smaller, and eventually it was pretty clear that, like, I would have to go freelance. So I did. For a while, I still just worked in the Devil's Due office, even though I was freelancer. And then Josh kind of closed up shop, and there was maybe 2 or 3 weeks where I worked by myself at home when I was like 30 something, and I couldn't do it. I was just like, I'm not an introvert. Like, I'm not, one of those guys that's just happy to draw by himself in the corner. I'm just not that guy. So I started reaching out to people I had worked with at Devil's Due. So I worked with Mike Norton there. I worked with Sean Dove there, and then my sister-in-law Jenny. And I just kind of was like desperate. Like I have to get out. I can't do this stuff at home. And it was Mike who was like felt bad for me. It was like, okay, fine. And so we actually rented a space in the same building as Devil's Due, and then Devil's Due kind of closed up shop, and we just had our own space. And I worked there for like 7 years, I think 8 years, maybe longer. It was a long time, but it was great. And it's just the only reason I'm here now is because and not at 4 stars that I had a kid, and then right after that was the pandemic. So we bought a house in Chicago, but not right next to this 4 star studio. So, and it has this space where I am now, and it was just kind of hard to justify having this like my little attic office and go somewhere else, So, so I moved home and I have my own little studio, but I try to. There's a couple comic book artists who live in the neighborhood, so we get together like once a week for lunch and kvetch, and sometimes we do creative stuff. So, so I try to maintain like a healthy social thing because I'm just not a like a guy who sits at home by himself. I wish I was maybe because maybe I would focus more on doing stuff, but I just need to like go out in the world. That's part of why I took the job at Columbia was I was just like I don't really need it, and it's kind of a pain in my butt. But I get to go hang out with like people and talk about comics all day. So, so I took it.
Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with that. And then at the class at Columbia, is that just like a weekly class, or so the commitment isn't that rigorous?
Yeah, I usually have 2 to 4 classes a week.
Oh
This
wow.
semester I have 2. Last semester I had 3, and then sometimes I have 4. Yeah, I teach a cartooning class and a concept art class. Those are the ones I built, I guess.
Hmm.
So, and then sometimes just when I can, I teach a little bit of animation stuff, or and I'll teach a little bit of storyboarding or something, which are just they're not as much my specialty, obviously, as design or cartooning. But yeah, I like and especially I was so glad I had that job throughout the pandemic because during that first lockdown, it was just so goddamn miserable. But I had to Zoom, and I would go check into my Zoom and chat with people, 3 times a week or whatever. So I think it's for my mental health. It's worth it. I probably save so much in therapist bills just by having these college classes. And
Sure.
instead of paying for them, I get paid to do them. So
Well, that's not bad. I mean, it's another social component to your life that you wouldn't have had otherwise, that the studios at least gave you, or working in an office. But you seem pretty regimental. I mean, I see a whiteboard behind you.
yeah,
So is that
yeah. My whiteboard. Yep. I won't let you put on too long so you don't see what I'm working on there. That's a secret. But
secret stuff? But no, I get that. I don't have a whiteboard here, and I really wish I did. I've always wanted one, and instead I have like Post-it notes all around my desk. But I'm envious of your whiteboard because I can't get that organized around here.
yeah, I mean, I'm pretty regimented, but I'm also kind of a winger. Like I have to have a certain amount of work figured out, but then the rest I kind of have to just improv it. So,
Hmm.
so I sort of the way I've done things for so long, whether it's writing or drawing or business plan or anything, is that there's a structure I build first, and then once I'm comfortable, I just have to like wing it. And usually when I write series, like if I write a 6-issue arc or something, um, 1 and 2 are always really figured out, and like the last arc part is really figured out, and in the middle is kind of, and so, but I have to do that. I kind of have to just like I have to, leave myself clues, which I was talking to Tom King. He described it as he had to go read his old issues to see if he left himself any clues. And like that's totally what I do. Like, I know what I kind of need, and I'll leave myself enough flex room in there that I can pick it up later. Like future me will be like, "Oh, thank you, past you. Good job. That was nice job. You let me some stuff that I can play with, and I know I'll do it. I'm never not. I don't know. Maybe knock on wood. Maybe I'll get to a script like, fuck, I left myself nothing. But in the past, I've always done it, and it's kind of like I have to like play a little game with myself too, like keep it fun. Like I have to be like kind of shocked. Oh, I can't believe this worked out. Like,
That's that's I wish I had that kind of epiphanies happening usually, but no. I'm thinking that whiteboard is the right idea. Marcus says he's going to donate to my whiteboard fund. We'll work that out. But no, that's cool. So in your writing, you have done some work for Marvel and DC, and I mean, how did that come about? Considering you were working in with more small press publishers and that sort of thing. I mean,
yeah.
just did you go out and seek it, or did they approach you?
I mean, it's weird. I've worked for Marvel, a dozen times or something, but I've worked for DC pretty consistently for like 15 years, I think,
Mhm.
which is crazy to me now that I think about it. But like as an artist, I went to them. I remember I went to DC and sent stuff, and Marvel too. So I was doing a lot of like just sort of the freelance stuff where I wasn't very invested. Um, but for the writing stuff, actually, like when Revival came out, so like I guess backing it up, when Hack Slash came out, I didn't get a lot of work from publishers that they were like, because for publishers they want to see what you can do and then prove that you can do it, and then they'll hire you for their stuff. But Hack Slash didn't lead to a ton of work anywhere, in part because of the way it looked. I guess maybe they were like, oh, we don't do those exploitive sexy books or whatever, and because it was kind of B movie maybe. There's just like one guy, Jordan White, who liked it and give me work based on Hack Slash. But when I did Revival, which was much more like serious,
Hmm.
then I started getting calls to do stuff, and the DC stuff, I'd done little things for them, but I was at San Diego Comic Con one year, and Scott Snyder had stopped by and said, "Hey, I really liked Revival." I was like, "Wow, holy shit, that's great!" And then like like a day later, I get from one of the editors was like, "Hey, can you come to this bar? We have a thing we want to throw you." And I was like, "Oh shit!" But it was that Batman Eternal book they were doing. They needed another writer. It was like a weekly book, and so they needed stuff. And based on Revival, they asked me to do that. And I was like, I can't believe it, because no one ever asked me to do Batman based on Hack Slash. But so that was kind of the start. When I started on Batman Eternal, then that led to Grayson and Nightwing and all the stuff that I've done for DC. Um, and it was great because of the DC characters, the stuff I'm most familiar with is the Bat stuff. So
Hmm.
except for like the weird shit, like but they weren't going to hire anybody to do Warlock or Warlord, I mean, or like you know, uh, just like the goofy stuff I love at DC, Creeper or something. So that worked out great, and I spent like 5 years on Dick Grayson total, and now I'm writing him again. I'm doing another Nightwing story with Kelly Jones. So
Oh,
uh,
sweet.
yeah, so that's been a great thing, and it's largely because of Revival. So Hackslash didn't get me no Batman, but that's definitely a thing I noticed with just how superhero comics kind of, they have to bring in new people, they have to get new voices in it, but obviously they have to hire somebody that has the right, has done a thing that feels like what they want, and
Mhm.
Hackslash was not that, and Revival was. It was like a crime story with horror elements, and that's very Batman. So if I was going back to give advice to myself or other people, is like, if you want to write Batman, write something that feels like Batman, and get hired from that once that sort of takes off. So and that worked with Local Man. When Tony and I put that out, then we started getting people like, hey, can you do something that feels sort of like Local Man? Like, yeah, sure, that's like you have to re-edition for whatever you want to do by putting out a whole comic book, a whole series basically.
That's cool. So with like your work with DC, I guess primarily, I mean, were you getting the jobs just from them coming to you with the need for a writer, or were you pitching them any ideas? 'Cause it sounds like if you could have pitched them on concepts, you would have been throwing some creeper ideas at them, or
Yeah,
there's
I
some
did.
something more up your alley, right?
Yeah, I did. Like I did pitch some of the weird, like I pitched yeah, Creeper and Firestorm and all kinds of stuff. And those pitches would always like go. They were real weird, of course. Like they were weird horror stuff when I do it, uh, and so they would like go, "Oh, these are good, but it's just a little too weird." And then they'd be like, "Can you bring the vibe of this though to King Shark?" I'd be like, "Okay, sure." But yeah, I mean, when I started on Batman Eternal, the cool thing was that the it was a very tight office, and Scott was kind of doing like a show running with Batman Eternal, and James Tynan was kind of like the lead writer in a way. So we all worked together, And then the Bat Office was great because everybody was kind of friends and we all hung out. So like when Nightwing came up, but it was Grayson, they would kind of go to us, like all, within the group, and that way we'd keep it tight. We would keep it all, all the story stuff. And Robin was like one of my first characters I ever was a big fan of, so it was easy for me to come up with a idea for even for Grayson, which was the spy Nightwing book, with Tom, and then working on Nightwing and stuff. So yeah, it was great. It's the only time in comics I didn't have to chase work. It was just like, hey, you want to do this? Can you come up with something? Like, yeah, sure. And it was, and now it's a lot more pitching. Although comics is weird, it's definitely changed like a way the corporate sort of big two. It's kind of rare that you pitch blind or that you pitch characters they don't have a plan for, because even if you just you kill it with like a Blue Devil pitch, they they're like, yeah, but it's Blue Devil. There was a time I think where that would have been different, but now it's very much like, oh, we have need of this character because we have other plans for them or whatever. So it you can sort of blind pitch stuff, but it's mostly like, hey, you did this thing that feels kind of like what we need for Angel Breaker or or Peacemaker or whatever. They'll come to you with the sort of they want the vibe that you did on something else.
Right. Right. Well, so Revival was good for you in that regard to get you some more mainstream work, but Hackslash definitely did lead. You've done a lot of independent, work, whether it was only covers or those sorts of things. So Hackslash wasn't a dead end for you.
Yeah.
It definitely, gave you a lot of opportunity with, a little bit maybe more bizarre or different characters and, smaller print run types of books, with, I'm trying to think.
Well, I probably bought this house, so there's that too.
Well, there you right.
So thank you, Hackslash. That was much appreciated.
There you go. And it's your own. So how did just trying to look through, or my thoughts are on this, but like Local Man, with Tony, how did that, the concept for that, Jesse, did it happen really quickly? Because Tony's done other, his other creative projects, that he's, I think he's more spearheaded on his own. Yeah. But this one you guys worked on together.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Well, so because Tony and I knew each other through Chris Burnham, who I used to have. Chris Burnham was in 4 Star Studios. He used to live in Chicago. He and I have been friends for, I don't know, 20 years almost. And so Tony was his friend when Chris lived in LA. So Tony and I would meet each other, whenever I went to a con and hang out with everybody. But whenever we would hang out, we would always talk about 90s comics, and not just 90s Image comics. Like Tony and I were big into like, Hall of Heroes and like Zen Intergalactic Ninja and Nera X and like that kind of stuff, which I still love. And Tony was like the one guy that we were the 2 guys who loved that stuff. Like everybody else, like, oh, I only read Electra Assassin, like whatever. I read Babe Watch, fuck you. Like we were into, the goofy stuff. But and so that's going back like, I don't know, a decade or something. And but we'd always talked about we should do something together. And then the January before the big shutdown and everything went nuts, I went out to Long Beach Comic Con. And Tony and I went, a bunch of people that all know each other, went out to Roscoe's Chicken in Long Beach there. And Tony and I were talking, and we decided over this dinner that the perfect comic would be one that looked like a 90s Image comic, but read like a 90s Vertigo comic. And so that we were like, that's it. That's the most perfect comic on earth. And there was another guy, Alex Chung was there, and we were all talking about this. We got kind of hyped about it, but I was like, wait, I have an idea that would be that. And I had been working on this thing, and it was called Local Man. And it was just like a rough notion. It was like a 90s superhero who used to be on Youngblood, basically. Gets kicked out and has to move to his home in Wisconsin. And so I had the nugget of that. And then, Tony's like, I like it. There's something to it. And he kind of threw out some ideas, some characters that he was working on. And then we went home and we didn't really talk about it. And then that March, everything got locked up and everybody's kind of bored and, didn't know what to do. And so Tony and I just started sending sketches back and forth. So, I would draw Crossjack and he would change the color. and we would just send stuff back and forth. And we came up with this like outline, and so it was like a pandemic like LARF. Like we would just work
Right.
on it. It was fun, and then we kind of got, by the time it was like a year goes by, and we started to be like, hey, there's something to this thing, but we were doing a lot of other work, and I think there was also the kind of question is like, well, how do we pull this off? And Tony came up with the idea of him drawing one side and me doing these flip books to save us both time. And then of course, the first issue is like 28 pages in the main story and 10 or something in the back.
Hmm.
But we did it. I don't know why we did it, but we did it, and we just love the book. And so it took probably 2.5 years maybe for it to end up being something that we were comfortable to submit to Image. And then once we did it, they're like, "Yep, sounds good. Let's do it." We're like, "Fuck, we gotta make a comic." So then we treat it's such a meshed up of our ideas. Like the initial thing, and Crossjack was a character I made up when I was a kid, uh, and but then it became like a bunch of Tony stuff and characters that Tony made up when he was a kid. Because one of the things we wanted to do is feel authentically '90s, and we both made up guys in the '90s, so we're like they look and feel like those kind of characters. But the book itself is obviously sort of about something else, and we had both gone through divorces, and we had both had sort of felt like we failed at our lives. So we started putting that stuff into it. And I think that's when it really gelled. Like it sort of became about dudes in their 40s like fucking themselves up and then realizing, what they did, and then kind of putting their lives back together, and sometimes putting it back together better than it was before. So that was kind of our path, I think.
Hmm. Well, it's been very well received. I've enjoyed reading them. So I mean, that's got to feel good, right? Especially on something that it's kind of it took a long time to get to print,
Yeah.
but it's something that was a part of your life for back before you even became a professional. So that's
Yeah.
the characters that you're creating and stuff. So I mean, I think that's damn cool, man.
Yeah, I think when Gold came out, which was the one where we um, basically just did a story like that involved a bunch of Image characters. We asked all our friends to borrow their characters, and like Mark Silvestri gave us Stryker to use, and Todd McFarlane gave us Boof to use and stuff. And we're like, holy shit, this is real. We're like we're mixing our childhood characters when we were 13, 14, 15 with like the actual Image guys, and they're letting us borrow their stuff. And that was such a awesome moment, and so surreal in a way that you can't even sort of really conceive of it in the moment. It's not till you like go, holy shit, we made this. This is weird. So
Oh well, man, that's awesome. I mean, I think anybody that's working in comics probably has the feeling like it's kind of I don't know. It's kind of I don't know. It's an exciting thing. It's something that if you've always dreamed about being involved in comics, to be able to be in it, it's got to feel like a dream half the time. And then to be able to work with creators that you admired when you were reading the books.
yeah,
Like you just said, Silvestri, McFarlane, giving the opportunity to work with their characters and introduce them into your world, which you're really borrowing theirs to begin with. I mean, shoot, it can't get any better than that.
yeah, and they didn't even charge us any money.
Oh, that would have been that. I didn't even think to ask you that. That's well, that just shows you that that they appreciated the idea, right, enough to
Those guys, like, they really practice what they preach too. Like that, the Image guys are really cool that way. They said this was going to be a creator-owned company. They were going to celebrate that kind of thing, and they mean it.
Mhm.
They walk the walk. So, and then we just did Bad Girls. Local Man Bad Girls just came out this week. And Eric Larson gave us She Dragon, and we got to do like all these cool things. Which if you had told me when I was 15 that was a possibility, I would have just blown my mind.
Mhm.
But I think the Image has become a different thing since then. Image is now like more like Saga and Walking Dead, and and that's great because comics is getting diversified genres, and that's what it needed, and that's awesome. But there's still this fandom out there that still associates Image with Youngblood and Wildcats and Spawn and Cyberforce and Savage Dragon and Shadowhawk and Wetworks and all those sort of things. And you know, it's it doesn't happen as much as I wish it would. That you get to see those characters together and doing stuff again in the same way that the Marvel universe exists and DC universe exists. And obviously, there is no such thing as the Image universe, not really. But Tony and I are determined to fake it until we get it. Like we're like, yes, there is an Image universe, and Logo Man is in it, and that's why Shadowhawk is here for a couple pages. Like it's almost just for us, but we're glad that other people enjoy it too.
Yeah, that is pretty cool, man. Nick Barucci popped in. Just wanted to remind you that you're one of the most talented and nicest people in the industry and hobby.
Well, thanks, Nick. Nick's a good dude. Speaking of people who totally stole license from us, he got the Army of Darkness instead of us, but then I went and worked on it anyway, so it all worked out just fine.
There you go. Yeah, Nick's he works in a lot of different IPs. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that's a amazing hustle to have those things last as long. And Tony just did Army of Darkness for Dynamite, so it all comes back around. See, everybody's your kid's Ash, and it's all the same thing, right?
Yeah, there is definitely, yeah. And our fathers were welders too. That's something strange there. Was your mother a teacher too?
My mom was she worked as a secretary actually. So okay. I'm as blue collar. Well, you and I are as blue collar as it gets. Teachers, welders, secretaries, like
exactly.
My parents didn't have a college education. They worked in a small town, and I was one of the first in my family to get that degree and then use it to make comics, I guess. So.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, very, very similar upbringings. What was there? I saw Matt from Pop Sequentialism wanted to make sure that DC pays writers well, right? I mean, I assume you don't keep going back to working with them because they don't. I assume they take care of you pretty decently when you're
DC
the writing game. Yeah,
this is great. I never complain about DC, and I had an exclusive contract with them a couple years while I was working on the Batman stuff, and I got health insurance and everything. Like just 2 years, but they're awesome, and I wish there was more places like as the size of DC that treats people the way DC does. I think they're such a rare thing, and they're changing all the time too. But they were built on that sort of Warner Brothers, sort of keep your stars happy, use them in lots of stuff. They definitely, it's the nicest big company to work for.
Well, that's cool. So before we get to the art sale side of things, Marvel, the Unforgiven series.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Was it your pitch, or did they feel you were the right man for the job?
No, they asked me to do it. I had just done Vampire the Masquerade at Vault, which was very similar sort of thing. But it's one of the guys was a big fan of Vampire Masquerade, and so had read that comic. And I loved writing Vampire Masquerade. It's probably one of my favorite licensed gigs of all time because I love that world, and it's a horror universe, which I love that's a thing, But so they'd asked me to do it, and they just had the notion that they wanted to use the Forgiven characters, and they had the notion that it would be some kind of event. And so then they just kind of said, well, what should we do with this? And so I came up with a plot for the characters, and then they were like, okay, now it's an event, but it's a crossover. So the first one is Spider-Man, the second one is the X-Men, and the third one is Captain America. And I was like, oh man. So I had to like restructure, reshuffle, all this stuff. I had a blast doing it. I think with those characters specifically, I think some of the readers kind of forgotten who they were. We had to kind of like figure out a way to reintroduce them and stuff. Man, I had a lot of fun with it, and I brought in as much sort of the other Marvel horror stuff as I could, and also I love old pre-Marvel horror, like some of the timely stuff. So, and no one is going to notice this at all, and that's okay. But the entire thing is around. There's an old Marvel horror story, pre-Marvel superheroes Marvel horror story, where there's a vampire. This woman she's a nurse. She goes to work at this nursery, and she's like, there's something weird about this place, and she realizes all the babies are vampires, and it's weird and dark, and it was made in like 1958 or something like that, and so the entire basis of my story is a sequel to that, and like, and if you read it, you'll see where it comes in, but one of the editors at Marvel, Tom Brevoort, wrote me, was like, I can't believe you referenced that story. I didn't know anybody even read that story. So he sent me. There's a guy that does reprints for Atlas Timely stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and so they were going to do a reprint of that story. I was like, oh, perfect. So that's how I always approach stuff at Marvel. Is like, I'm just going to make this weird and fun. I don't know if anybody will notice, but I'm just going to do that. Actually, that my vampire or my Nightwing Deadman story also has a callback to a DC horror story. It's a major part of the story too, that no one will notice really, but I will. And so I try to put that stuff in as much as I can, just because I don't know, feels like there's a big texture there, and a lot of those horror stories are so amazing, but kind of forgotten because they don't introduce a superhero or IP or
Sure.
So might as well like use them, you know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, on that DC project, did you let the editor know what the ties were, or did you just, yeah?
Yeah, and I told Kelly about it too. It's actually a Steve Ditko story, so Kelly was super into it. It was like an old, pre Steve Ditko working for another, so he did this horror story. It's about a circus. I was like, well, Nightwing is a circus guy, and Deadman is a circus guy, and you did a horror circus story. It's like I got to put those together. So yeah, I do those kind of things. I don't know if anybody notices, but if you read my shit, you'll always see I always tie back to some weird old Marvel history or DC history thing.
Well, it kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier, having to draw the character out before you can write them, and you like the whole tapestry of the story. So it makes sense that you don't want to just go in cold on a story that you don't have isn't grounded somehow in a reality for those characters, or at least for that publishing line, right? DC or Marvel or something.
Yeah, and I some of those the artists of those books sometimes they would later go and do superhero stuff, but they loved westerns or horror or like crime stuff. Like you can see those artists who would probably complain about drawing superheroes just having a blast drawing like a western because they were probably fans of those genres. They were they were doing stuff pre sort of fandom. They didn't grow up on Spider-Man. They fucking invented Spider-Man. So like they're going into this like, but they are fans of Universal horror and stuff. So you could see their excitement. So I feel like bringing that back in is like an homage, like tip of the hat.
Exactly. No, that makes a whole lot of sense, man. I'm forever in search of a war page by Lee Elias or something like that. I mean, I love that era. Romance, not so much, because that was a big part of comics prior to the Spandex Heroes and everything too. But so many artists got their start, John Romita Sr., right? Got their start really doing romance books and things. So
Kirby and Simon used to package romance comics and stuff. So, I think now that we have all these genres, we take for granted that there was a while there that superheroes were just one part of this whole thing. And then, from like basically like 70 something on, it was superheroes all the way until like 2005 or something. Like it was just, they dominated every way. And it wasn't until, we started getting Walking Dead and stuff like that where we started breaking away from. And I love superheroes, but man, I really like to read some horror comics or some crime comics, sometimes.
Exactly. Well, hey, I think we're not at the hour yet, but we can jump in and do the art sale, start talking about that, because I think we'll have a fair amount of things to talk about just by looking at the art. I mean, we've got a diverse set of things that you worked on, some current, more current than others, but definitely some local man stuff. So that's cool. And I think we have an interior page from Gold, which is nice to see. So we'll let me give everybody the ground rules on how we handle art sales around here, because I do have all the art in hand. That's the number one thing is with most of the shows that we do. So as far as claiming any artwork that we show, you're just going to type claim and the lot number in the chat, and whoever types it in first will be the one to get it. We see everything in the studio a lot more accurate than everybody does when they're in the chat on YouTube. So it'll be easy for us to know who claims first. But every slide that we show, and there's going to be 17 of them today, we'll have a lot number on it. So very easy for you to know which one you're claiming. You can claim a piece of art at any time. So if you kind of want to wait and see what pieces we're bringing, and we're on lot 17, you can go ahead and say claim lot 4 or whatever. There's no rule to that. You just can't claim anything that you haven't seen yet. As far as payment goes, we like to get payment within 48 hours of the show. I like to have that taken care of, and then we can ship the art out early in the week. That's the way we like to do things around here. We definitely prefer Zelle and Venmo, and even a personal check if you can drop it in the mail on Monday versus having to go a credit card route, because if we need to use PayPal, we do charge a 4% U.S. Service fee, or 5.5% if it's international. But again, we always try to avoid that, and I'll work with people who would prefer to have a no fee added on. And as far as shipping goes, if it's domestic, it's $30, international $65. I ship everything in Masonite, so very well packed, and yeah, I haven't had too many issues with that. But I like to ship stuff the way I like to receive it. So Masonite is the way to go. I make a lot of trips to Home Depot. They don't like me over there. But they've given me a direct line. I can now order Masonite to be cut before I go in, and they prefer it that way, so they can do it at their leisure versus when I'm there and I'm like, I need it now. I'm not leaving until I get it. But yeah, so there you have it. There's the ground rules. Is Tim doing commissions at C2E2? Because I think that was something I did want to ask you about, because I think it's in WonderCons this weekend. I think I saw you on the C2E2 list. Yeah. So doing commissions at C2E2?
Yes, absolutely. I never take a list beforehand because it stresses me out. But just go to the table. I'll be there all damn week. I promise. I'll be there with my wife and kid. And you can just sign up if you go early. I'll do whatever you want. Just hit me enough early, and I'll drop stuff for everybody. And C2E is my hometown show, so I'm always happy to do it. And I'll definitely get it to you before the end of the show.
Perfect. And for the rest of the year, do you have any other shows planned that you're going to be doing?
Yeah, we actually tried to do more shows this year than I have been in the last couple. So I'm going to a show in Traverse City, Michigan. I'm doing some stuff. I'm going to that Connecticut. What's the show with at the Mohegan Sun?
Yeah, Terrificon.
Terrificon, doing that. San Diego. As many as I can pack in and drive around the Midwest, I'll also do this summer. So try to have time.
That is a very busy schedule. That's good.
And I'll do a bunch of the Galaxy Cons this year as well. I'm not sure which ones. Raleigh or Richmond, or no, I think Richmond just was. Raleigh or Louisville, or one of those. I'll do somewhere over in the South as well.
Mm-hmm. Sweet. Yeah, it's definitely Terrificon. So then Tony Rodriguez says, "Hey Tim, what's up?" All right, well let's get into the art. Well, because I know we got plenty to talk about here with these 17 pieces that we brought, and I did these alphabetical order, so there's no rhyme or reason other than that. So they are grouped kind of by title.
And these are all mostly recent, because most of my cover stuff is gone. So these are all within like a couple of years, I think, because nothing. I don't think I have anything really old for covers.
And is that you've sold it all, or yeah?
Sold it. Yep.
Well, that's good. And we are showing mostly covers. I think out of the 17 pieces, only 2 pieces are interiors, so it's mostly cover work that we're going to be showing off today.
Yeah, I seen the good ones from Gold. I thought those were fun. So yeah.
I thought those were awesome. So here, let's so the first one, Barbaric, number 3, ye old shit pit. How did this one I mean, I had to ask, because I'm not familiar with Barbaric, and it seems the artwork is kind of barbaric in its own way. So this is on 11 by 17, so everybody knows, and it is 750. But tell me about this title and how you got this gig.
Well, Barbaric it's a title of sort of fantasy dark spoof by Mike Morisi. It's a big hit at Vault. It's one of the biggest hits at Vault, I believe. It may eclipse my book Money Shot, so go to hell, Mike. But they were doing these Black Bay covers, and which are the adult covers. They usually have nudity on them, and everybody had done ladies, sexy ladies. So I was like, you need a sexy dude. So this one is, but the character is such a grimy shit that so the idea is he bent over to drop and accidentally hit the top of this monster, so you see his leavings up there.
Yep.
And I was talking to Adrian from Vault. It was like, you never see on covers is like the top of dude neck, like the crotch. So this one is he's pulling up his shorts. You get a little bit of male nudity. Never happens. And this one was a particular. I sign this one all the time because people who love Barbaric, they think this one's particularly funny, and that you get a little bit of nudity on it is pretty great. And then you get Axe, his talking asshole monster acts in the scene as well.
Well, yeah, you see, you can't say you haven't drawn something like this now in your career, but
Well,
this,
actually, I'm a mutual exploiter. I don't care, dude naked, lady naked. I don't care. I'll put it in. I think we need more sexy art. You need more sexy dude art. So this one, sexy, but the character is he's such a shit that he can't be too sexy because he's kind of a terrible person. So uh,
right.
that's part of the idea.
Oh man, well, this one. I mean, if we could, everything we look at today, we could almost say, was this from the work on Hack Slash or Revival? So I think this is definitely a Hack Slash influenced job that you got.
Was at Money Shot probably more than anything because Money Shot is my big long term belief has been that people like we need more sex in comics and like positive sex stuff because I think like when nerds get bitter, it's only because they're not getting laid. So like I just really try to be like, you know what, but just be happy about sex stuff and you won't be such an angry bitter person and get laid and so introduce more sex stuff. Money Shot is my big sex positive sci-fi romp. So yeah, that one's definitely related there.
Yeah. Well, I interviewed Larry Wells. I don't know, it was about nine months ago or something. So I get it. I mean, I know I get there isn't a lot of that historically in comics. It's just something that gets
It's in Money Shot.
better.
So
Yes, exactly. But we'll save that for when we look at some Money Shot artwork, which we do have coming up here. So let's see, what do we have on lot 2? Oh, that's right, the Bloodshot, which I thought was interesting. The published cover doesn't quite match the the artwork that you did. So I was curious about the difference there.
Yeah, so I was writing this series. This was the Bloodshot arc, essentially planned around the release of the Bloodshot movie, and so they wanted to go back to a sort of more like action. Jeff Lemire wrote it before me and did sort of more of a psychological sort of thing, and so they're like, "Hey, can you give us like a more high octane, big explosive Bloodshot?" So I did that. Brett Booth was the artist, but this was one of the variant covers, and yeah, so they told me, originally like, "Hey, give us like just a classic Bloodshot scene," and to me that means his guts are hanging out and he's shooting people in the face and all that kind of stuff. And so then I drew this up, I sent it in, and this one actually ended up being for it was like a I think it was more for like a direct, not like a direct market, but like something associated with the movie, like they were going to put it in, in like theaters or something. So they're like, "Hey, can you take the guts out of it?" So uh, in the original, I drew over the top of it in my iPad, but this is the original, and as you can see, uh, never before seen here is the original art of which he has been shot in the guts and he's hanging his intestines out in his hand.
Yeah, they could not give this away at the cinemas, and there's no way Vin Diesel would want people to think that he could ever be eviscerated quite like this. So, oh man,
This character, yeah, Bloodshot so he had this run, but they were back in like the late '90s. There was this company called Claim that temporarily like they bought Valiant and stuff, and they did this run of Bloodshot, which was a different version by I think it was like by Len Kaminsky and Sal Voluto, and he was like Frankenstein, and in every issue he was like. I remember there was one where he got shot a bunch of times and he grabbed a cat and stuck it in his chest. It was like, gruesome. It was my favorite. So I try to bring some of that stuff into my version here.
wow. I guess I missed that book with Bloodshot, but you taking advantage of house pets to
Yeah,
to save your life.
yeah, it was pretty great. It was gruesome, but I like a good monster horror thing, so that was right up my alley.
Oh yeah. Let's see here. Lot 3. I mean, this has a Nick Barucci Dynamite tie, right? The Chastity 6 cover on 11x17. This one's at $900. So, how did this come about?
Well, so speaking of '90s stuff, I love the Chaos universe,
Hmm.
and all those characters Brian Pulido created for the universe Chastity and Lady Death and all that stuff, Evil Ernie. And so Nick has the Dynamite and Nick have the rights to all the Chaos characters. So they asked me to do a run of covers for Chastity, and she is one of my favorite characters to draw. It's such a perfect design. She's such a um, she's assassin and a vampire and a total badass. And so I knew this was coming out around Christmas. So she's crawling down the chimney, about to stab some poor shit. One of my favorite things I've ever drawn. It's a pretty good one. And then you can't see it in the actual cover, but in the stockings is a bunch of uh, little stuff. And I actually put one of my characters, Jack Kraken, as an action figure up in the stacking there.
That's awesome, and Nick Brucci has claimed this one. He does like to bring the art back home, definitely. But thank you, Nick.
Yes, yeah, you paid me for this one already. Now you paid me for it again.
Well, that's perfect. I actually have some art that I'll be shipping to Nick in a week or so I'll be able to easily put that in there. Nick, we won't have to charge you for shipping. We're saving money here. That's awesome. But that's cool. So you got the cover gigs then on that. That's fun. Was it for the Christmas one? I mean, was it directed that way, or you just knew when it was coming out, so it just kind of fit with the
I asked the editor, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, that'd be fun." And I had written the chaos sort of event book that sort of sets up the universe. Burke Andolfo drew it, and so I knew which design of chassis to use and all that sort of stuff because we kind of set it all up. So yeah, I love those characters. We did a hack slash versus chaos universe through Dynamite. Anytime I can work on that stuff, again, it's like a superhero universe, but it's all monsters. Like, how could it be better? Love it.
Well, that's perfect. And again, thank you, Nick. Let's move on to lot number 4 here. So this is something called Deathstalker. This is with Jim Terry pencils. I think Jim wasn't he part of 4 Star Studios as well?
Yep. So this is there's a series of films from the 80s called Deathstalker. They are Roger Corman produced. They are sort of classic for a whole lot of reasons, not the least of which they're quite offensive. And so Vault Comics had a deal with a bunch of musicians to do some comics based on their lives or whatever. But Slash from Guns N' Roses, who they worked with, he was like, "No, man, I want to do Deathstalker," and he owns the rights to it. So I wrote the new series of Deathstalker. I believe it comes out early next month. Jim Terry drew it. This one is Jim Terry's layout. So he did the layout, and I printed out on. He did it digitally, and then I printed on board, and I inked over the top of it. So it's a collaboration for the cover. That's Deathstalker there, and that is Pigman, one of the classic characters from the original film. So this is a personal favorite of mine. Is like I said, I love B movie stuff, and Deathstalker is the B moviest of B movie. But we treated this as like a big event, and now there's a new film coming out, produced by Slash, directed by Steve Kostansky of Psycho Gorman. And this acts as a prequel to that. So that's the big spiel on this one.
That's cool. Did you get to be in some Zoom calls with Slash, for this project?
Absolutely. Yeah. He's awesome. He's like the coolest, most mellow dude. And he was so enthusiastic about like the most fucked up things we could think of. Slash be like, hell yeah. He'd be super into it. So
the more the better, right?
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Well, so this one's still available. Lot 5 does have some nudity on it. I just have to tell everybody. And unlike when we do Dueling Dealers and my daughters are making the slides for me, I make the slides for the weekend shows. So I don't cover up any of the naughty bits on this one. So if you're offended by the female figure, then avert your eyes from the next few minutes here, because lot number 5 is from Flesh-Eating Cheerleaders, which was a Kickstarter. I couldn't find a straight image of the published cover, and it came in 2 flavors: one where the cheerleader is dressed, and one where she is not. But so I pulled that from the Kickstarter page. But it's a good example to let you know how it was published. But so tell me about this one, Tim. How'd this gig happen?
Yeah, it was some guys, and I've worked with them before, and they were doing this book. And everybody knows I like naked ladies and monsters and gore. So they asked me to do the cover, and I just had a good old time with it. I just went crazy, and I really took advantage of they were going to do a nude and a nude cover. So like it's set in 1969, and it was supposed to be this, like the good girl cheerleader goes bad, kind of a, all those stories of the time where, the nice suburban white girl is tempted into becoming a terrible monster. And so I had a good time with it. She's got the big 1960s eyes, innocent eyes, but she has just chopped off some people's heads. So yeah, had a good old time with it. Nothing fancy on this, pretty much. It is what it is.
It is what it is. No, I mean, hey, 1969 was a very good year. But and she is like Matt pointed out, she is wearing shoes and socks. So that's you got to have you got to be ready for action. But yes, a beheading, a pair of beheadings. This is great.
Yeah.
But at $800 on this one on 11 by 17, everyone, and even Dr. Balls he's laughing definitely at home, screaming great cover. All right, so lot 5 is still available. We can take a look at lot 6. Now this is an unpublished cover to Hack Slash, so something that you were thinking about using and then it didn't get used.
Yeah, it started out as a sketch for somebody, and then he ended up not wanting to go through with it because he had a different reference that he wanted, and I kind of screwed it up. But then I liked the image enough that I turned it into a cover for one of our hardcover books. And then actually we decided not to use because sometimes we'll get away with doing clearly nods to existing real slasher characters that we do not own. And I got carried away with this one, and they're too close to the real designs. In fact, they are just actually Freddy and Jason and Chucky and Michael in the Slasher Strip Club. So I rejected this one, but I really like the image, and I thought it was pretty fun. Slasher Strip Club, Freddy with the dollar in his claws. So it didn't end up on a cover, but it's a personal favorite drawing.
All right, well there you have it, everybody. I was curious, what the history was behind that, but that makes a whole lot of sense. You don't want to get any IPs, breathing down your neck and giving you a hard time about it. But
well, I kind of figured because the way that those covers end up working is that we have there's all these little stuff. There's a sticker that says horror on it. It sort of looks like a VHS box. And I kind of figured I could cover up stuff, but then I was like, oh, it's just too much effort. I'll do something that I won't get myself in trouble with. So but there you go.
Yeah, Kelly Goon asked, is Chucky old enough to be in there?
There you go.
He doesn't look old enough, Kelly, but I do think that
Charles Ray was in his 40s. I know that much about it. So
yeah. All right, well, lot 6 still available. What do we got here? Lot number 7. Now this is the piece, and I forgot to put your wife on here. I apologize. This was for the omnibus number 4 cover for Hack Slash, and this was penciled by you and painted by your wife. Is that correct?
Collaborated. So my wife is a fine artist painter. She's a really good paint. She's a very good painter with acrylics, so it's acrylic paint. And so we were doing for the omnibus covers, as you can see, they sort of look like old VHS boxes. They have the sort of beat up edges, and they've got the credits on the front like an old VHS box. So I wanted it to look like one of those painted box covers. So I gave it to her, penciled it up, gave it to her, and she did these paints on it. So it's a Seeley House collaboration. Only person here that didn't work on it was my daughter. So yeah,
she's only 4. We give her time.
Yeah, she's a pretty good artist, so it won't be long. But so it's signed by myself and my wife Paula.
So have you and your wife Paula worked on anything prior to this, or is this something new?
We created my daughter. That was a big one.
Oh, that's okay.
But no, we haven't. This was the first time we tried this. I think we did it at a couple of conventions where I would pencil something at commission and she would color it with markers. But this was the first one that we did where I would draw it and she would paint it. I think this was the first one.
Now, I mean, I've got the art here because this was just done on a regular board. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
You can see the pencils in the background. If you look close, you can kind of see the lines and stuff there. But we built it up and made it all shiny and nice.
It is very nice. Yeah. Let's see. Little John mentions that loves that omnibus cover and just received their copy of the book. So
great! Yes, those were just going out this week. We learned some things doing these Kickstarters, and we finally figured out how to time the release of the printing to the end of the Kickstarter. It took us a year and a half, but we got it down. And so this was probably packed by my assistant Sarah or Jen or one of the fine ladies over at Devil's Due. So that's how we still work with them, and they do the Kickstarter stuff for us.
I was just going to ask you about that fulfillment on the Kickstarter. So you don't do that at home. There's keep that out of the house.
Yeah. Yeah. So so Devil's Due, Josh, the guy that I worked with back at Devil's Due Days, Devil's Due still does their stuff. Josh has a really nice space with a big table. He does lots of this stuff. So I was just in there last Friday watching them fulfill it. Not doing anything, just signing stuff and being a jerk. But yeah, my art assistant Sarah also works for Josh. So the Chicago scene, we keep it pretty tight. It's everybody works with everybody else.
Well, very cool. And Dr. Ball's like the horror VHS rental sticker. I forgot all about those until I saw the published piece when you sent me the image. The other day, I was reminded of that same thing. That's how they used to signify the genre that the VHS tapes were in.
Almost only just horror, because they didn't want people to order something, something and then be like bad because it was a horror movie. And that's the great thing about horror movies. They had to tell people, just warn them, just so you know.
Yeah. But let's see here. Lot number 8. Let's switch over to something different. We got Hexware number 6 cover on 11x17. This is from, like I say, it's from issue 6, priced at $900. And I mean, tell me about this title, because this is kind of interesting. I haven't read the books, but I read the summary. It was kind of cool. I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, this is Hexware. The story is it takes place in near future, and instead of the old story of someone selling their soul to the devil, in this story, a android house assistant buys a soul from the devil, and it's basically a robot becomes a witch. Is the story? It's a story we came up with, and it was published with Arancia Studios, which is Mirka Andolfo's studio. So Mirka and I have worked together since that Chaos book, and we're friends. And so this book was with her studio. She has a bunch of artists managed by her boyfriend, David. And so we came up with this book and published it through Image. And it's a collaboration. And this is the last issue where the robot becomes quite skilled at using the magic and is fighting against this evil tech bro dude. I love this book. It combines all kinds of shit I like. It's like a cyberpunk horror thing. So it's got androids and big cyberpunk shit, but also has a giant Greek werewolf and a vampire who she separates from her body and her guts go flying around, and all kinds of crazy stuff. It's a personal favorite.
Sweet. How many stories do you have going on at any given time? Because it seems like you don't have any. You said you only work 10 hours a day. You turn everything off at a certain point, but it seems like you have a lot of projects that are, active, which is a little crazy.
Yeah, probably too many. But I don't know. I just have a lot of ideas, I guess. I love making shit up and seeing other people, do their versions of it. So, this one I worked with. Her name is Zulema Pescado. She's an awesome artist. Zulema Lavina. And so this is my drawing of the characters. I designed them, like I said, because I'm obsessive and weird about it. But turn it over to Zulema, and she did her cool versions. But each issue had a cover by me and a cover by her.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is the last one. This is my personal favorite of them, where you get to see some of the other characters. So that's the big old. Every time I get to draw a werewolf, I'm having a good time.
Awesome. All right. Well, this is the only Hexware piece we've got. We're going to be going into local man stuff now, and some stuff we were just talking about. We have lot 9 here. This is the one of 3 Bad Girls covers that we've got. We've got the A, B, and C version. So this is the A version, priced at $1,000 on 11x17. So I mean, this is like right out there now, right?
Just this week it came out.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the covers were designed to sort of link together. They're like one big image. It's mostly done with the color and stuff there, but yeah, this is Neon. This is the A cover. So this one is the most common one. And if you read the book, it's sort of an anthology, but it's all one narrative, but different characters from Local Man sort of get their origin told. So Neon is Crosscheck's former partner on the super team he was with, Third Gen, and she's also his ex lover, I guess. But she's very complicated, and this story really kind of sets up that though she looks cute because she's all pink and blue and got light powers, that she's super terrifying. And this was based on a character I made up as a kid named White Light, but we already had a character who was all white, so we changed it to blue and pink.
Well, Dr. Balls has claimed this one. Thank you, Dr. Balls. We do appreciate that. Yeah, I was actually at a comic shop yesterday, and I saw this and the other two books there. So let's see here. So Dr. Balls has claimed lot number 9. And let's see here. Now, this one, we had I actually unboxed your art on my live stream the Thursday before last, and somebody had said something about a bagel in the chat, just as unrelated.
Yeah.
And while I was in the middle of opening it, and literally like the next piece I looked at was this piece. And so we're going to look at that now, lot 10. You've got, this is the B cover to the Bad Girls book. And again, priced at $1,000. Inga. Now, was Inga something that you created, when you were 15 or 16 years old?
Yeah. So in the book, Inga is Jack's small town girlfriend. He ends up ditching her and going off to LA to join the team, and she stays behind. And spoiler, she starts out, as his like one friend that he goes to see. But as the series unveils, and I don't want to ruin anything, so stop the show if you don't want to hear more about Local Man. You plan on reading it later. But she ends up being the villain behind everything. So she was the small town, good girl gone good, and then she realized she's actually the villain of the entire series. So she owns a bakery that does like healthy multi-grain bagels and donuts, but she's in Wisconsin, and that's hard to do because people don't want it there. And so she ends up becoming a major character in the book. She was actually based on a character I made up as a kid called the Bad Guy, and the idea of that was that the perfect villain would be someone who just looked like, just like a dude and like had like a job that didn't seem very threatening. So it was basically my idea of like Dr. Doom would just be like a schlubby guy sitting in a coffee shop, like running the entire army of evil bad guys kind of thing. And so this is Inga. So in this one, we get her sexed up because it's the Bad Girls book. So she's just wearing the apron. But in this, a couple things I like about this cover. She's got the bagel, but originally you can see on her chest was jelly that was supposed to also look like blood, because all the Bad Girls books when I was a kid, they would always have blood spattered boobs, and I was like, well, let's have jelly splattered boobs. But Tony thought it looked suspicious, like it looked like so Reber erased it off the cover. But in the original, you get to keep the blood spatter boobs there.
The artist intent is what you get here.
Yeah. Yes, you get the full plan, which was. And so one of the things I love about the Inga character is like she doesn't look like a superhero. She's in her 40s. She's got like big mom hips and everything, and so that part of the design, I was like, I really wanted to draw her. Like she's an older lady and she's got big hips and her boobs sit a little bit lower and all that stuff. I had way too much fun drawing this character.
I can tell, but see, this is the second cover from our set here where you had to be edited, after the Bloodshot one. So
I'm often edited.
You're pushing the envelope just a little bit. Well, actually, we could call it the third because the strip club, you edited yourself on that one.
I edited myself, yes. Happens all the time.
All right. Well, this one's still available, lot number 10 here. So let's take a look at lot 11. And this is the C cover from that. So again, I'm assuming character created, when you were in your teens.
Yeah, this is Frightside. She is sort of a major villain in the series, but also kind of a sympathetic character. She also gets her origin told in this one. She's a mercenary, and she's possessed by this monster called the Fright. And as you can see, the Fright is like a weird, toothy, demon-eyed monstrosity. When she's possessed by it, she can turn, her hands into big, crazy, veiny weapons and weird shit. But so this is the third part of the cover, and she's when I was a kid, her name was Darkside, but obviously I couldn't use that because that has been taken.
Mm-hmm.
well, even if it's spelled a little bit weird. So she got renamed Frightside for this book, but she's actually like a major character in there. She figures pretty heavily into the first arc as well. Um, so, and spoiler, uh, she gets murdered in the first arc. So this is her storyline continues even if she's dead.
Very cool. So we had we had the A, B, and C, and the A was picked up. That was lot 9. So lot 10 and 11 from the Bad Girls covers are still available.
And
Um,
these display really nicely together. So you may want to get the other ones because they're all connected. So
that is true. I did lay them out that way just to see how they look together. So I guess so we can show we have 2 interior pages to show off here. So lot 12 is the first one. So this is from Local Man 7, page 1, from the backup, and this is on 11 by 17. We got this one priced at $400, and this is just a fun page to look at. I mean, I love the design on it. I love the layout. You did a great job on it, but Cap's shield, kind of, I guess, in its own way, and so he's not, he's just. Imagine you're just riffing on things that you enjoyed as a kid from other comics too, while working on this, right?
there's a whole reason Crossjack has a shield actually, and so part of the thing with Local Man is like it's kind of a meta thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason he looks like the X and everything Crosscheck does is the thing that Tony and I talked about. It was that all '90s characters look like X-Men, so we just made Crosscheck have a big X, even though it's a cross, not a big X. Marvel, don't send any lawyers. It's a big cross, but so the Crosscheck, that's part of it. And the reason he has a shield is that in the '90s, Rob Liefeld was doing Heroes Reborn,
Mm-hmm.
and so he did Captain America, and it was a big success. But he ended up leaving the books early before he finished them, and to sort of continue some of the stories that he had, he just licensed the character The Fighting American, which was created by Jack Kirby and Joe Simon as well. And so he did several stories with the character Fighting American, but he kind of reused at least some of the early images had the shield because they came from the Captain America stuff. And he got sued by Marvel or cease and desisted because uh, it was a patriotic character with a shield, and so they sent him a cease and desist. And they ended up settling, and the deal that he made was that he could keep the shield, but he couldn't throw it. So the meta here is that Crossjack has a shield and he throws it all the time, but he doesn't look like that. So we're good. But yeah, so the character's power, Crossjack, his ability is that he never misses. As the story goes on, you realize there's a reason for that. It's not just that he can throw stuff. He's actually got some kind of weird psychic powers, but he's just like a jock dude, so he didn't know it. And so this page is from the second arc, where we get the side of the story that is told from Inga's point of view. So Inga's story is essentially her seeing Jack go off, do stuff in LA, be a big superhero, and he's saving the billionaire owner of the team, who is this Argentinian or Colombian or Brazilian lady, and clearly the team is funded by big money and very dirty. And this is them fighting the faceless horde, who's a major villain in the series as well. So it's got everything on it. This particular one.
Very, very cool. Yeah. Marcus says the chest is too small for a Liefeld cap. Maybe.
Yeah, probably. Well, it depends on which angle that you're doing.
Exactly.
But we threw tons of meta stuff in this, and it doesn't necessarily matter the story, but for us, it's like a fun way to create around this like larger real life stuff that happens as well.
Sure. All right. Well, this one's still available. We have one other interior page, and this one is from Local Man Gold, and this is a pretty darn cool page. I felt in the backup story as well. So on 11 by 17, priced at $400, and we get him in costume with shield. He's not throwing it though, but no, this is a very nice page. Explain your, we talked about that when we were on the phone the other day, but the process when you're doing your interiors or even your covers, as far as how do you rough them out and lay them out? What's your process with pieces like this?
Yeah, I do my layouts on my iPad, so I kind of figure out like the storytelling and the stuff. I really like doing it that way because I can flip it, change it, cut it. flip it, reverse it, like Missy Elliott. But I can do all that sort of stuff. And then I print them out, the layouts on a board, and then I pencil over the top of it so you can see the blue line. I use a blue pencil to do the pencils, and then I don't have to erase. Then I can just go straight to scanning them. So this is from Gold. In Gold, we sort of we find out that there was a big crossover between two companies, two superhero publishers, and they fused their characters. So Jack was fused with this guy called the Flame. That's why he's partially on fire, and his Neon was fused with Miss Mask. So she was the Neon Mask, and so it was this big inner company crossover that he was part of. But you find out the downside of it is once you've been fused with someone, they've lived your entire life and you've lived theirs, and it kind of fucks you up because know all these terrible things about the person and all the good things too. So it was also pretty meta. But this was the first page of the backup. When if you read Gold, you see that he's trying to get out of. They're trying to stop this fused universe that happened, essentially. So I used, because I wasn't able to use Valiant characters, obviously, like the original Deathmate. We used public domain characters. So there's Phantoma and Miss Mask and Black Terror, and so Camo Crusader and Black Terror become the Camo Terror, of course, right? So yeah.
Yeah, this is so it's riffing on kind of the Amalgam universe, and
yeah, Deathmate essentially was our big riff there.
Sure, of course.
So yeah, he's a flame shield, so like you see him, he blasts Camo Terror there with the flame shield, which is pretty cool.
Well, very, very, very cool. And Shane says Gold was a wild issue. All right, well, this one's still available as well. We've got I think 4 more pieces to look at. We're moving out of Local Man right now and into something a little bit different. We have Masters of the Universe Forge of Destiny cover. I forget when was this published, because this is, like you said, it's been the last couple of years, right?
Oh, this year. I think 2 came out in maybe December or so. Yeah, like
all right, really, so very, very recent.
Yeah. And so this is a prequel to, in a way, to the Revolution cartoons animation that Mattel did. That's on Netflix. And I wrote this series, and then the artist interior was Eddie Nunez, who designed the characters for the animation show with Powerhouse Studios. And so I'm a big He-Man fan. It's my favorite thing that I didn't make up. So I got to draw this. This is sort of connects to the story. In the story, Adam he's stuck with Tila and he can't turn to He-Man because she's right there, and he doesn't want to show it to her. But I drew from the mini comics. There was these guys called the Kobolds, and they terrified me as kids. They were like these weird pink and blue guys with scary faces, designed by Larry Houston. So I put them on the cover. So it's a nice little nod back to old Masters of the Universe stuff.
Well, yeah, very cool. I was a Masters of the Universe fan, and one thing we didn't even touch on was your toy collection and your affinity for all things from this era. Really, I mean, we talked about the comic books, but it didn't stop there, right? I mean, you're
yeah. Well, I learned my first comic ever was a Masters of the Universe comic, because the toys came with mini comics, and that was it. That was what did it. I read that thing. I read it so many times it fell apart. I still have the one that fell apart, and so everything comics that came after started with Masters of the Universe. So for me, it's also the thing I know best. Like Jeff Johns was blessed with the knowledge of everything Green Lantern and Flash, and I don't know shit about those 2 characters, but I do know everything about Masters of the Universe. So I've worked on it quite a bit. This is from this most recent miniseries. I also wrote Masterverse and Injustice versus Master Universe, and I have another Master Universe series coming out soon.
Very cool. What was this? Scott mentioned that you have the most impressive Masters of the Universe collection that he's ever seen.
Yes, I'm sure Scott has seen so many Masters of the Universe collections.
He does say he's a little worried about you.
I was at my house last summer after at Fan Expo, and so we were hanging out in my yard, and I made him come down to my basement and look at my He-Man collection. So it's a weird thing I do to people. I'm sorry. If you're a comic book artist, you come to my house, I make you look at my He-Man collection.
If they run away screaming, you know that they're going to be a true friend. But Scott must have hung tough, right? And
yeah, he was disapproving, but not afraid. Yeah, so
good. Oh man. So let's see here. We talked about this book a little bit earlier. The Money Shot comes again. This is the B cover to issue 3 on 11 by 17. So tell me a bit about this one. Like you said, you have cherry Pop Tart kind of infused in the storyline, but again, it's back to the lack of TNA in comics had something to do with all of it.
I aim to fix it. Yeah. But, Money Shot is the premise is essentially in the near future, scientists are unable to fund projects. These characters are part of a thing called Starshot, which allows them to essentially teleport large spaces across time and space, but it costs a shit ton of money. So they shoot porn with aliens to fund it. If you haven't read it, that's the premise. And so I write it, but I occasionally draw the covers as well. And in this story, they found this giant dead god in space, and they ended up. It had a virus. What killed the giant dead god lady was that she had a virus that killed her, and the virus was now sentient, and so his name was Cuck COVID, like a cuckold and a COVID put together. So yeah, so this cover was she's taking a selfie with the dead god. So and I didn't realize it when I drew it, that it's kind of the cover. It's very similar to the Mobius cover of Silver Surfer Parable.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to. I wasn't thinking of Galactus. I wasn't thinking of Silver Surfer. Kirby, I guess, obviously. But then I went back. Someone noticed it. I was like, of course, it looks sort of like that cover. I love that book. So it was not a purposeful homage in any way. Just sort of ended up looking like that. But yeah, it's our character Chris. That's Little Shot. He's the floating camera, and he's taking a picture of her butt with the dead god.
Well, I read that the books. I have not read the book, but I read the book synopsis, the summary. What it's all about, and I knew I couldn't read it. So I'm so glad that you were able to succinctly nail the story.
I've had to explain it quite a few times.
I'm sure. Oh man, but all right. Well, we got two more to go here. Lot number 16 is next. This is from West of Sundown, issue 7. It's the C cover on it. And it was funny when I first looked at this one, I didn't notice the like the tarantula fangs and that character hanging in front of the window. But yeah, this is kind of unsettling the more I looked at it.
Yeah, this is my horror western. I love, like I said, I love other genres. So I have wanted to write a western so long. 20 years I wanted to write a western, and I figured out a plot with my friend Aaron Campbell. Aaron Campbell draws Hellblazer, but he's also a creative genius, and he knows everything about New Mexico Western history. So we came up with this together. This is the main character. The series is about a vampire who lives in New York, and she gets chased out of town by vampire hunters. Has to go back. They burn her coffin full of soil, which is what keeps a Dracula-style vampire alive, and she has to flee back to New Mexico, where she's from. And the hunters follow her, and the hunters turn out to be a guy who's created by Dr. Frankenstein and a young kid named Griffin. So of course that's eventually would become the Invisible Man. And so it's a Western that has all kinds of classic literary horror characters. So this particular arc, that girl was created by Dr. Moreau. She is a fusion of animal and human, so she's got a big spider face coming out of her. So sexy Western bath time plus Dr. Moreau monstrosity.
Yep, it's got all it's got all that in spades, man. I'll tell you, the coloring, as kind of unsettling as the image was, I love the way that cover was colored too. I thought it was very.
Yeah, it's Triana Farrell. She is amazing colorist. Yeah, I really think like this book is the one where I'm like, it did okay, but it was not as successful as Money Shot, and so I'm never sure why. Because I'm like, it looks so good, and I think the premise is great, but I think westerns are sometimes harder to get people excited about. But yeah, this cover, even if you're not a fan of the book, hot vampire taking a bath in blood with a weird tentacle faced girl is a winner anyway.
I'm with you on that one, but because I'll tell you, we look at a lot of art on the channel, and very rarely do I say I like the colored version of with it. But I think she did a
Yes, she's
fantastic job on this one, man.
agreed. Yeah, she's really really talented.
All right, last piece from the same series, West of Sundown. This is the issue 10 cover, priced at $800 on 11 by 17, and it's it's filled edge to edge with creature on this thing.
Oh, I love that one. So this is, again, we're doing this whole sort of fused literary horror thing. At the end of the arc, you realize that the bad guy the entire time has been this Cthulhian monster from H.P. Lovecraft. So the story has kind of been Frankenstein and vampire and Invisible Man against Cthulhu, essentially. So there's a scene in this issue where she gets transported to the other world, and she sees this thing eye to eye. And so we get this big cool scene. So that's kind of a shot right out of there. She's walking with her gun. Yeah, love this book. Wish I could do another arc of it. I guess we have to see how the trade sales do, but this one turned out pretty great.
Yeah, the logo works really well with the your artwork. It feels like you could almost move it around and put it exactly where you want it, and it just complements the piece. So I like it as an overall cover design too. It's fantastic.
Yeah, we originally had it over the eye, but then we moved it down. I was like, oh, it looks actually pretty good there.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to look at and compare it to the other cover just to see how you didn't keep it in the same space like normally you would do. I think that's awesome. Like a giant alien sea cucumber, says CJ. All right. Well, this one's still available. That was lot 17. So we had two pieces picked up, lots 3 and 9 by Nick and Dr. Balls. I've already been emailed by Dr. Balls. Thank you for that. I always appreciate people getting back to me right away. And so we'll go ahead and I'll just run through the other ones that didn't sell really quick, so everybody knows which pieces are still available. And then as we all know, many people watch the show afterwards, so you can email me, bill@comicartfans.com, and inquire whether a piece is available or not. I'll be putting these up on CAF later this evening as well, and probably sending out one marketing mail early in the week. So yeah, if you see a piece you're interested in, feel free to hit me up, and I'll let you know if it's still available. So lots that we know for sure. First up, Barbaric with that deuce on top of that creature's face. Not very happy. This one was from Barbaric issue 3, priced at $750. Then lot 2 was the Bloodshot cover with you can see the final version was a little bit edited and cleaned up. No guts showing on that one. This one's $800 on 11 by 17. Then Nick got lot number 3. That was that Chastity cover from Dynamite. So we have Deathstalker number 2 available. Jim Terry pencils on this one, and you've got Tim's inks on it. This one's $800 on 11 by 17. All the art is on 11 by 17, by the way. Then lot 5, the Flesh Eating Cheerleaders number 1 cover. This was one of the variant covers from this Kickstarter, and it's priced at $800. Then we had the self-edited hack slash cover. Too many proper likenesses for the creatures on this one and the villains of horror here. So this one's priced at $800. Then we had the piece that Tim did with Paula, his wife. This is from Hack Slash Omnibus 4 cover. This one was priced at $1,100 and fully painted over Tim's pencils. Then what was it? It was the Hexware cover. Was lot number 8. This is the number 6 cover, final in the series, priced at $900. Then we had Dr. Balls pick up the A cover to the Bad Girls book. So here's the B cover, Inga with her knife and bagel, wearing nothing but an apron, priced at $1,000. And this is the C cover, 11 by 17, priced at $1,000. We have 2 interiors coming up. Local Man number 7. This was page 1 from the backup story. This one's priced at $400. And also lot 13 from Local Man Gold. This one is priced at $400 as well. Lots of amalgam references in that story. Then we have the Masters of the Universe Forge of Destiny cover on 11x17, priced at $1,000, which is lot 14. Lot 15 was the Money Shot Comes Again #3 cover. This was the B cover, and you can definitely feel the Mobius influence here, even though it wasn't intentional. In some ways, man, we're all influenced by the creators of the past. It just happens, right? So I think this turned out really well. So this is priced at $900, and then we have 2 West of Sundown covers. This is the one to issue 7, cover C, priced at $800, and the one we were just looking at, West of Sundown 10, lot 17, priced at $800. So there you have it. Those are the pieces that are still available, Tim. This was this was a lot of fun, man. I mean, we've probably run into each other. I used to go to a lot of the Wizard shows in Chicago, so we've probably crossed paths one way or another.
Sure.
But when I lived in Cleveland, that was like Wizard Chicago was my go-to show before. I've never been to C2E2 though, unfortunately.
It's a goodie. I recommend it. It's got like the most sort of active, busy artist alley of any of the shows I've been to, except for like Heroes, I guess. But it is surprisingly like people really excited about art there. It's great.
Yeah, Heroes is good for that. Baltimore is good for that. And there's still shows out there that care about the artist placement. I mean, GalaxyCons, like you mentioned. I mean, I think I have never been to one, but I've heard good things about those. And Terrificon, obviously, is one that I think you always see the creators posting about it, on social media, that they had a good show afterwards.
Yeah,
really enjoyed it. They have a great lineup.
And then you blow all the money you made in the casino.
Yeah, that's why I probably shouldn't go there. At the end of the day, I don't gamble too much, but if you get me in a casino and you start giving me free alcohol,
yeah,
it's almost all over at that point. Kelly did ask a question. As far you're no longer working with Cadence, that's still let people know. How would people get in touch with you if they want to pick up any artwork? Given kind of everything being in a little bit of flux for you right now.
I mean, Paulo still has all the stuff for a while. Yeah. I'll get stuff back later. These are some of the ones I've gotten back. So, in the meantime, I think you can still email Paulo about it. I'll eventually get that stuff back. And then we'll figure out something else. I think, I have an art gallery and stuff. So some of our thoughts were maybe we'd figure out a way to, do our own thing. So, but I'm gonna have a big box of shit in my house pretty soon. So,
well, remember, Comic Art Fans is always a place to post artwork for sale. So if you want to put stuff there, let me know. We have a virtual con coming up in May, our 9th. We've been doing those on the site for a long time. They do really well. So if you have any interest, or I'd be happy to fill you in on how all of it works. But just having a CAF gallery is where you kind of get started. So
I also could just have a giant bonfire in my yard.
I think Dr. Balls would be going. He'd be calling the fire department, because clearly he's a huge fan of your work. So don't do that. That's not what we want to hear. It's always it's like the Walt Simonson saying, he's going to have a funeral pyre, and all this stuff. I mean, I'm sure that's not going to happen, but he's joked about that in the past, and I'm sure it makes a lot of OA collectors
just sweat.
Yes, exactly. No, you can't do that. So anyway, Tim, it's been a lot of fun. I appreciate everybody who hung out with us today, on a holiday weekend, no less. And, I sincerely appreciate that. So again, anybody, I've already got the email from Dr. Balls, but anybody has any interest in any of the pieces, hit me up, bill@comicartfans.com, and we'll answer any questions for you. And again, enjoy the rest of your weekend. And again, Tim, thanks. It was a pleasure, man.
Thanks so much, Bill. Appreciate it.